You think you know my story because my enemies wrote it with the blood I spilled, but the salt of Carthage's tears is older than Rome itself. Do you know what it is to be a ghost that has haunted the Mediterranean for 2 millennia? I am Carthage, the new city, and I was born of a betrayal and of an oxhide that embraced a hill. Look upon the waters of Tunis and tell me, do you see only waves, or do you see the wake of my prefabricated galleys that once dictated who lived and who died on these shores? My destiny was not to be an empire. I was meant to be only a port of call for the sailors of Tyre, a refuge for an exiled queen, Elissa, whom you call Dido. She fled the greed of a murderous brother, carrying with her royal gold and the cunning of one who knows that power is not begged for. It is taken by contract or by blade. I was born in the 9th century BCE in 814 under the sign of Tanit and the heat of Baal-Hamon. While Rome was still a cluster of shepherds fighting over muddy hills, my ancestors were already navigating by the stars, using Ursa Minor, the Phoenician star, to cross the blue abyss where no Greek dared to enter. I was not a people of pure blood, as your historians try to classify. Recent revelations of your own time confirm what I always knew. My DNA was a cosmopolitan mosaic of Sicilian, Aegean, and Berber ancestors, united not by biology, but by trade and Punic culture. We were the fusion of the Levant and Africa, a thalassocracy that breathed the scent of cedar and the precious stench of murex, the sea snail that gave us Tyrian purple, the color of kings. I remember the early fear. Carthage was not loved by the neighboring Libyan tribes. We were intruders who paid tribute to use the land until our ambition grew larger than our purses. But we had the Kothon, our heart of engineering, a double harbor, rectangular for merchants and circular for war, capable of sheltering 220 ships under the gaze of an admiral who watched the horizon from a central island. That harbor was not merely stone and water. It was our declaration that the sea was our private domain. I grew watching ships depart for the Tin Islands and the coasts of Senegal, bringing back goods other peoples believed to be myths. Secrecy was our greatest weapon. We lied about routes, invented sea monsters to drive away the curious, because we knew that information is worth more than silver. My childhood was surrounded by rituals you now consider barbaric. In the Tophet, where silence weighs heavily, we buried the ashes of those we offered to the gods in times of extreme danger. Roman propaganda would say we were monsters who devoured our own children, but the truth is more complex, a mixture of desperate devotion and the harsh reality of infant mortality that spared no one. I saw the stone stelae dedicated to Tanit, the face of Baal, with arms outstretched, protecting the city that grew like a living organism. My mind was forged in this duality, the luxury of embroidered fabrics and painted ostrich eggs, and the austere discipline of an army that would become the sledgehammer of our political will. You ask how a colony became the queen of the Mediterranean. It was necessity. When Tyre fell under the empires of the East, I did not weep. I took command. I became the center of a network linking Iberia to Syria. I did not seek to conquer vast lands like the Romans. I sought to control ports, nodes of the network, the flow of wealth. My initial strategy was commercial isolation. We signed treaties with Rome when they were insignificant, merely to ensure they would not sail beyond Cape Bon. I was wise, or perhaps too arrogant to see that the wolf was growing on those distant hills of Latium. My fall did not begin with a sword, but with the illusion that silver could always buy peace. Do you hear it? That sound is not only the wind through the ruins, it is the whisper of a civilization erased, yet unwilling to be forgotten. There was a time when the Mediterranean was a Carthaginian lake. If a man wished to wash his hands in the sea, he had to ask Carthage for permission. My empire was not a continuous block of land, but a tentacled organism fed by Iberian silver, British tin, and African gold. I ruled not only by fear, but by financial influence and blood alliances. My generals, the RBMHNT, were separated from my politicians, the suffete, so that power would never concentrate in a single hand, a system even the philosopher Aristotle admired for its stability and merit. But greatness has a price, and the loneliness of the summit is felt in the weight of the gold coins I minted to pay men who did not speak my language. My army was a kaleidoscope of nations, Balearic slingers who could strike an enemy's eye at distance, Numidian cavalry who rode without bridles like the wind itself, Iberian infantry with their sharp falcatas, and fierce Gauls who fought naked to terrify the timid. I was the conductor of this orchestra of war, and my greatest instrument was the Barca family. Hamilcar, the Thunderbolt, taught his son Hannibal to hate Rome before he could even read Punic inscriptions. I saw that boy swear eternal enmity before the altar of Melkart, and I knew he would be both my glory and my ruin. When Hannibal crossed the Alps with his forest elephants, the world held its breath. That was not merely a military maneuver. It was an insult to geography and a direct challenge to Rome's gods. I financed every step of that journey with silver from the mines of Carthago Nova. At Cannae, I witnessed perfection, the pincer movement that encircled and annihilated 80,000 Romans. That day, the ring of every fallen Roman knight was sent to Carthage as proof that the Italian monster was bleeding. But power is a blinding drug. While Hannibal waited for reinforcements in Italy for 15 years, the merchants of my capital, men bloated with gold and short on vision, feared the rise of a popular general more than the survival of their greatest enemy. We denied him what he needed to strike the final blow. Betrayal did not come only from outside. It flourished in the halls of our own Senate, where the faction of Hanno the Great preferred profitable peace to total victory. While war raged, I showed the world how to govern. My laws were precise. My agriculture was the envy of the ancient world. Mago, our wise general, wrote 28 books on how to work the land, raise livestock, and produce passum wine, coveted even by the Romans. Our villas in Byzacena were covered in white stucco, surrounded by orchards of figs, pomegranates, and olive trees irrigated by complex canals. We were scientists of the soil and masters of the sea. We created mass production for our ships. If one sank, another could be assembled in days from numbered parts. It was this efficiency that terrified Rome. They realized they were not fighting merely an army, but a civilization operating like an industrial machine 2,000 years ahead of its time. But tension was constant. The crown of Carthage was not gold, but responsibility and fear. The Council of 104 watched our generals with inhuman cruelty. Failure in battle meant crucifixion. I ruled under the shadow of the cross and the fire. With every victory of Hannibal, I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet in Africa. I knew Rome was like a hydra, cut off one head and 3 grow in its place. They had the manpower reserves of the Italic tribes. I had to balance the loyalty of mercenaries who fought for coins, not for a homeland. The peak was a dance on the edge of an abyss. I was the richest city in the world, my markets overflowing with ivory and silks, and my women wore marble masks with gentle expressions that concealed the anguish of an overextended empire. The price of greatness is loneliness, and in 202 BCE on the plains of Zama, I learned that even myths can be overcome by those with more patience and less to lose. The silence began before the flames. It began with the Treaty of 201 BCE, which tore off my wings. I was forced to burn my fleet before my own eyes. 500 galleys turned to smoke that darkened the Carthaginian sun. I was forbidden to wage war, even in self-defense, without Rome's permission. I became a client state, a shadow of the sovereign I had been. Hannibal, my brightest son, tried to save me through civic reforms, fighting the corruption of the oligarchy that hollowed me from within. But they betrayed him to the Romans. and he fled into exile and poison. I was alone, surrounded by the Roman wolf and the jackal Massinissa, the Numidian king who stole my lands while the Roman Senate looked away and smiled. Carthago delenda est. The words of Cato the Elder echoed in every session of the Roman Senate. They did not fear my sword. I was already disarmed. They feared my resilience. In just 50 years, I had paid the astronomical war indemnity, and my economy flourished again through agriculture. Carthage's prosperity was its true crime. In 149 BCE, they gave us an impossible ultimatum. Abandon the city. We will destroy it, and you must rebuild your lives 16 kilometers from the sea. How do you ask a fish to live in the desert? How do you ask a thalassocracy to forget salt? We chose death with honor. For 3 years, we resisted a siege that defied logic. Our women cut their hair to make ropes for catapults. We melted statues of gods to forge swords. Scipio Aemilianus, the adopted grandson of the man who defeated Hannibal, built a dam to choke us by sea. When the walls finally fell in 146 BCE, what followed was not a battle, but an extermination. For 6 days and 6 nights, the Romans fought house to house, rooftop to rooftop, burning everything they found. I heard the screams of thousands crushed beneath the ruins of 6-story buildings. Hasdrubal, my final general, surrendered out of cowardice, but his wife, she was the true soul of Carthage. She cursed her husband from the top of the burning temple of Eshmun and leapt into the fire with her children, preferring the embrace of ashes to Roman slavery. 50,000 survivors were sold in slave markets, the remnants of a population once numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Rome pronounced an anathema upon my soil. Legend says they sowed the land with salt so nothing would grow, but salt was unnecessary. Fire had already done the work. My libraries, centuries of geographical and literary knowledge, were distributed to Numidian kingdoms or simply left to rot. Only Mago's agricultural treatise was spared, because even Rome needed to learn how to cultivate what it had destroyed. They tried to erase me, but salt preserves. Rome had to rebuild a city atop my ashes a century later, because the site was too perfect to ignore. My Punic language survived in villages for more than 700 years. My people became the backbone of the province of Africa, and 2 Roman emperors, Septimius Severus and Caracalla, would speak Latin with the accent of my ancestors. Today, when you encounter a marble mask of a Phoenician woman or the DNA of a sailor in a Sicilian tomb, it is my voice you hear across the abyss. History is written by the victors, but truth is guarded by the land. Be careful what you destroy in the name of security, for the ghost of Carthage walks within every empire that believes itself eternal. The sea belongs to no one, and the sand always reclaims its throne.